Things are looking up. Your business is growing. So what's your next step? A bigger office? A new supplier? Your next big contract overseas? Your business has growing needs. You'll need more support, more flexibility, more resources, and a bank that makes it their business to help expand your business. Welcome to Business Banking with HSBC. All our experience and expertise brought right to you so that you and your business can take the next step. You'll have support from a dedicated relationship manager and access to our global network of experts. The flexibility to manage your finances across multiple devices. International accounts all on one platform. And much more. So choose Business Banking with HSBC and take your next step.
Hello and welcome to the 7th Annual Indonesia Economic Forum. We've been going full steam for the last 3 days, and we have another exciting panel ahead of us on the prospects and the future of the digital economy. Of course, much has been written, spoken, and even projected about Indonesia's digital economy. There is so much excitement surrounding this sector that sometimes it's hard to fathom all this excitement. Just this week, Google released a report noting that Indonesia's digital economy is set to expand by 11% to 44 billion in 2020 from 40 billion last year, showing resilience amid the COVID-19 pandemic that has wreaked havoc on online transport, that has been fueled by online transportation, food, and travel services. The promise is there and is undoubted. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the adoption of tech across many sectors, starting from online shopping, transportation, to healthcare and education. We have now become so accustomed to using technology to such an extent that even our own Indonesia Economic Forum this year is 100% virtual, without any erosion in either the quality of the content or the number of participants. In fact, by leveraging in technology, we have grown multifold this year. This proves that the digital economy and the use of technology such as IoT, AR, AI, and machine learning will drive economic growth. But Indonesia must not only be a consumer of technology. Going forward, we must also be producers of technology, and only then will we truly elevate our standard of living and our quality of life. With this in mind, it is a great honor to welcome Pak Nyoman Adhiarna, Director of the Digital Economy, Directorate General for Informatics Applications, to deliver the keynote address. Pak Nyoman, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope my voice is quite clear.
Loud and clear, sir.
First of all, it is my apology that the Minister, Johnny G. Plate, is not available due to other commitment, and he requests me to represent him. Allow me to deliver a speech of the Minister. Hope you understand how the highlight of the issue that the current government now face. First of all, Dr. Ilham Habibie, Chief Executive of the National ICT Council of Indonesia, Mr. Mark Burley, Mr. Greg Lembong, Ms. Poonam Sagar, our distinguished speaker for today's session, Mr. Sachin Gopalan, the co-founder of Indonesian Economic Forum, who will also be our moderator for today. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May the transformative spirit stay with us all in this challenging time. Indonesia is among one of the top countries whose business segment the use of AI technology. Through the study conducted by Forrester Consulting and Peer in 2018, Indonesia ranked first in AI implementation among 8 other Asia Pacific countries in the survey. At least 65% of businesses use AI-based market intelligence regularly. A Boston Consulting Group study in 2019 also projected that Indonesia may gain 40 billion US dollars throughout 2019-2023 from the public and private sector cloud industries. As with the Internet of Things technology, Indonesia is forecasted to have 440 million IoT connections by 2021. It will expand to 1.4 billion connections by 2024. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with the new technology industries progressing at unprecedented pace, it is now the time to go beyond while concurrently starting with the discourse to capitalize on the sector's enormous potential in a provident and prudent manner. It is imperative that further utilization of these digital technologies bring benefit to the people, become solution to the societal issues, and enable a more inclusive and sustainable economic growth. During the pandemic, we have exposed a new frontier of the expansion of AI, IoT, cloud, and big data technology. To grasp the momentum, both of us, the government and the private sector, must progress, not only in the digitalization process, but also digital transformation process. As Forbes described, digitalization refers to using digital technologies to change the business model and increase the value producing opportunity. Digital transformation aims higher and expect essential cross-cutting structural change in approach and mindset that must be digitally driven, supported by digital technologies. This particular digital transformation spirit is also affirmed by our President, Mr. Joko Widodo, with his distinguished 5 directives on digital transformation acceleration. According to this mandate, the government of Indonesia envisioned a digitally transformed nation with an immense yet equal digital infrastructure and ecosystem, an advanced technology adoption, a robust data infrastructure, combined with a strong digital talent. And it is important to note that the government acknowledged the adoption of new advanced technology as imperative to foster digital transformation. You can mention AI, blockchain, cloud computing, data analytics, security, etc. are to be the prime mover of digitalization and digital transformation. In this sense, digital transformation and the new technology adoption correlate in a mutual reinforcing way. Further technological advancement will pave the way to faster digital transformation, and as the transformation matures, it will facilitate the exploration, innovation, and adoption of more sophisticated technology. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in order to do so, the Ministry of Communication and Informatics, our ministry, therefore promote the following 3 policy approaches. Firstly, the ministry aims for an equal and inclusive playing field for businesses by expanding technological access to all business players, including the micro, small, medium enterprises. Currently, business players that are aware the know-how to capitalize on technology to grow their businesses are mostly the established players, particularly from the outside. In contrast, the micro, small, informal business players are left with the limited capability. Through increased understanding on technology utilization and market intelligence, these micro actors will be guaranteed a more inclusive and sustained economic growth. Secondly, the ministry encourages the national technology industry development to be localized, specialized, and tailored to and correspond to the current domestic demand. We must not think that Indonesia is far behind in this technological race, as there are still too many untapped potential to grow. Among all technologies, the IoT development sectors provide Indonesian business actors with the best national market domination opportunities. The IoT technology characteristics require localized and specialized knowledge on local issues to give an accurate solution. Foreign players may see that as much effort. It is a niche that local business players can further maximize. Finally, as a part of the commitment to create a robust digital ecosystem, the Ministry affirmed that the urgency to finalize pending issues related to high regulatory costs that implicate the growth of technology industry. Such efforts are made through the initiative to expand the access and distribution of physical digital infrastructure as well as cloud infrastructure. By 2022, the government expects to finish the deployment of 4G mobile broadband infrastructure in 12,548 villages that have not yet been covered out of Indonesia's entire 83,218 villages. In the third quarter of 2023, a high-throughput satellite will also be launched to support the facilitation of high-speed internet access points in 150,000 internet-limited public facilities out of the total 501,000 identified facilities in Indonesia. Also, by 2023, the government intends that national data centers be adequately operated to support the enhancement of e-governance service and data integration initiative. Complementarily, the government also aims to improve the process of bureaucratic reforms and further facilitate with the necessary digital regulation on personal data protection and other related issues. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with a parting thought. In making innovation, we must bear in mind that technology itself is a tool we use to achieve our goals, and not the goal itself. Notwithstanding the significance of efficiency and productivity, we believe that technology should give positive impact to humanity. Providing broader access to the opportunity through technology is one thing, but to assure that no one is left behind and to be able to use technology and gain opportunity is another thing. Indeed, we also need to allocate resources to strengthen education and assistantship on how to use technology responsibly and gain higher productivity. Furthermore, we the government realize that we cannot do this alone. We require collective partnership and collaboration between stakeholders, government, business, media, and the people to foster a rule-based, secure, and conducive digital ecosystem equipped to harness the full potential of this advanced technology. And therefore, I look forward to a more mutually reinforcing partnership with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Nyoman, for your wonderful presentation. And I think we can take a lot of encouragement from the Indonesian government's commitment to growing the digital economy infrastructure and ecosystem, because I think without the infrastructure and the ecosystem, all the other players from SMEs to micro enterprises to startups to the larger corporations will not be effectively able to harness the power of the digital economy. So thank you very much, Pak Nyoman. Are you able to take one or two questions? Yeah. Sachin, Gopalan, my co-founder of the Indonesia Economic Forum and moderator for this session, and some of the panelists, would you have some questions for Pak Nyoman? Sachin,
I was very impressed with the... Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. So I was very impressed about the way you have laid out the policy change, or I would say the direction which the government has recognized. I think you would have seen that the potential of Indonesia in the digital sector is extremely high, and we see that this is more from a user perspective. Firstly, a large population which Indonesia has. Secondly, so many sectors that can really benefit from the digital economy that is going to come up. So, do you have any specific sectors in mind where you think this digital transformation growth will really be so significant that it will change the composition of the Indonesian economy?
Thank you, Sachin. Actually, we still conducting research on this area. But basically, in the Ministry of Communication and Technology, we put the priority in the 6 sectors for digital transformation. Firstly, it's of course agriculture, maritime, including fishery, then education, then healthcare, and lastly is the tourism. Why we focus on those 5 priority sectors? Because we know that there are many people will involved. We can help if we successfully transform this sector. There are so many people will be empowered to get better benefit from the digital technology. Indonesia have a big population working in the agriculture, in the maritime, and also in the small medium enterprise. So we have to focus on this. So by transforming this sector, we hope we expect that a lot of things that we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. How is the government looking at the social impact issues of digitalization? There are 2 ways. One is, of course, definitely privacy and related to security, etc. The other is from a heavy usage of digital, which is creating other kind of social impact. Is there a view from the ministry on that?
Yes, definitely. The social impact of the digital technology is very important we have to consider. But before that, I have to explain that we have to consider in our ministry 3 things. When we talk about digital transformation, you are not talking only about digital economy, transformation on economy. We are not talking only about how the government to transform, but we need also to transform the society, the people itself. So that's why in the next few years, we will put much effort to put priority. Digital literature is the most important thing. If people are not fully literate, this is very difficult. How to distinguish the information, misinformation, disinformation. There are so many issues that we have to control those kind of things. Second way, we want people to use the digital space productively. We have many people, more and more people having gadget, but how to make gadget become the productive tools of the society? It has become also important issue. So that's why digital literacy is the more important aspect of our project. In the next few years, 20 million people have to be transformed digitally through we have the national movement on digital literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. I particularly noticed your comment about the level playing field, which is basically, I think that's the right approach, because digital transformation into the regions will only happen when people are empowered in the regions, in the local area. Larger companies tend to focus on big cities or big areas which are of interest to them. But what about the smaller parts of, the interior parts of Indonesia, which may not be a good prospect for a large company, but they have a local economy which can definitely benefit with digital. So my question to you, Pa, is how is the ministry actually, in practical terms, going to help the MSME sector? Are you looking at funding them? Are you looking at educating them? Are you looking at bringing technology to them? Let's say there's a small village in a remote part of Indonesia. How actually are you engaging with the local entrepreneurs there?
Thank you, Sachin. We are have in the last few years we are working with the cross-sectoral ministry
Yeah.
to put the priority on the small medium enterprise. Even a few months ago, the president himself put the priority, the importance of small medium enterprise for our economy and how to help them to transform digitally.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we have to do is to facilitate, to provide them with a training, to provide the what is we call as partnerships, how to use the technology tools. It is not on. It is not enough. Digital technology alone is not enough. Of course, we have to support the other things. Let's say
Yeah.
the finance. Let's stay
Yeah.
with the training and other things. And above above that, actually, not as the foundation of that. Of course, we have to consider more about the digital infrastructure, connectivity. It is a big issue in of our country, but of course, getting more and more better. But it is a big challenge. We have, I already mentioned, 501,000 villages. How to accelerate the connectivity among the in Indonesia from west part to east part is the big challenge. So in the next few years, the government put the increase the budget to build the infrastructure for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Panelists. Actually, that answers, the practical aspects of how, the private sector, especially in the smaller sector, needs to engage more and more with the government. And I think
Yes,
direction is right.
Yes.
So, I actually am originally from India, and I've been in Indonesia for now 24 years. And I have been part of the digital economy from 1998 when the first dot-coms and the company started, right? So I have seen a lot, and I must credit the government for actually playing a very positive role in allowing the sector to grow and not being restrictive or not trying to put too much regulatory frameworks which will not allow it to grow. So I think it's been a good side-by-side approach of growing with the industry and supporting the industry. And the proof is there. I mean, say we have 5 or 6 unicorns in Indonesia. And the fact that 80% of the country is digitally connected is it's not a joke. It's a serious achievement. My question to you is, how India actually has leapfrogged from a nation which was largely agricultural and industry-based to a tech sector industry in a span of 20 years. That's what India did when the programming and coding part of the industry. Now today, Indonesia also has that kind of an opportunity to leapfrog and change the composition of its economy. So I'm saying, I want to get your view of, does the government see this opportunity, or is that on its target to actually become a digital nation from an industry sector perspective, or you see it as a part of a bigger balanced economy in the future?
If I understand your question correctly, of course, this is a partnership between not only government also, but we have to work together with private sectors, and it's a big challenge for us.
Yeah.
And I already mentioned there are 3 transformations we have to do. First, government have to transform digitally, then economy, then the lastly is very important also the society.
Yes.
India have a very strong foundation about the digital sectors because in the past, we are very strong in the coding and programming. In Indonesia, this is a big issue. We have created a program we call as a digital talent program.
Yeah.
How to help people who just finished their graduate, who just already working, they want to learn more about the digital technology. Basically, we want to prepare more people. We all want to prepare people to be ready, to get ready for Industry 4.0. We already calculate, we need 9 million people, Indonesian young people to retrain again. So we work together with other software companies to train people, with other top level universities to provide training, free training to the people, to already working people, to improve their digital talent. This is one important thing, I think.
Very good.
We lag behind from the other countries.
Yeah. So, like how you're saying, training is a big opportunity for partnering. Is there other opportunities for partnering with international companies, which might be, maybe in technology, infrastructure, etc.? How do you see the partnering side of it, being an open invitation for more foreign investment into the country and things like that? How do you see that balance playing out?
I don't know how to answer it, but we provide, we open. Of course, I think this is not on my ministry. Our coordinating agency for the investment, we provide. We have to streamline our regulation. We have so many red tape. I think we have to open our economy to the big company to invest in Indonesia. I think this is another ways we have to do. It is not beyond the scope of our ministry, but the economy should be open. So as our president mentioned, that we have to deregulate our economy, to remove so many obstacles. You heard about the omnibus law. We try to actually to remove the red tape in our government, our regulation.
Actually, you make a good point. The key here is to be able to work with all the other ministries. How does that actually happen? Because there's a tech ICT component in every ministry, right? So how does that actually work in terms of coordinating with every other ministry for this particular function?
Yes. Working together, cross cooperation with other ministry is very important. Yeah, it's a challenge also. But we have a ministry of coordinating ministry for the economy. They actually in charge for the digital economy framework. So we now still conducting some studies how to put the priority, which one is how to work together among different ministry. I think this is a big issue also for us. But of course, when we can solve this issue, I think we can work better after that.
Sure.
Yes.
Are there any immediate short-term goals for 2021 that you have in mind? Because this plays out over many years. In a 10-year period, digital transformation is easy to talk about. Anything immediate that you see 2021 you'd like to see achieved?
I think first, I think about the infrastructure. We have to improve our connectivity, so benefit for the people. Second one, we have, I think, we have to help the people. I already mentioned the small medium enterprise was suffering a lot during the pandemic. We have to recover them. One of them, we encourage them to transform digitally. So this is key point, I think. Small medium enterprise recovery is important. So we hope in the 2021 they will their business will be better.
That's great. So I would like to ask my panelists if anybody would like to present a question to Padiljan, please feel free. Unmute yourself, please, and ask. Anybody from Mark or Poonam? Okay, if there isn't any, I'd like to keep this engagement going, because the Indonesia Economic Forum, and Pak Shoaib will confirm that, has a special interest in the digital economy. And if you know, the last 2 years, we've been closely tracking how the digital economy is going. And we feel that, the real success of this will come from open discussion and engagement with all the stakeholders.
Yes.
Because the sector is growing so fast and in so many different directions. It's like, the horses being bolting out of the stable and they're running in all directions. And the coordination and close cooperation will really play an important step. You actually pointed out very rightly that infrastructure is one of the key challenges that we have to solve. And I think private sector plays a role there as well, with some of the initiatives that some of the companies are doing into the regional areas. I think rural sector internet connectivity is a big challenge,
yes.
And for the farmers especially. Do you see any specific approach or direction for farmers from your side, from the ministry, in the agricultural space maybe? Do you see that as a target at all?
I think I cannot explain this because this is the big issue of in the agriculture, actually, not only about digital issue.
Yeah.
We have to ask my colleagues from the Ministry of Agriculture.
Correct.
But we have piloting. We have piloting using of the smart agriculture, smart farming. We already launched some piloting project in this area. Hopefully that it will be adopted by the farmer in the rural areas. Yeah, we have some piloting. But the big issue of the agricultural sector, it is beyond the Ministry of Cominfo. You have to ask my colleague, my
Understood.
for agriculture.
Poonam, you had a question. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello, Pa.
Yes.
Thank you, Sachin. You know, now increasingly with the increased amount of data that we are collecting about everybody around, we are using data in unprecedented ways. So what about cyber security laws, or even to do with how we might do digital privacy laws for all the users whose data is being collected? Is there any initiative to look at how we can protect digital people's data?
I'm not sure I can answer this question because one thing is that we are now working to finalize the draft law on the personal data protection. This is now it's a priority, but during the pandemic we cannot finish by the end of this year.
Right.
Talking about the cybersecurity, we already established the Agency for Crypto and Security, or BSSN. They are working for this actually. So I think you have to ask to them. But I agree with you that it's two important issue that we have to respond here, because it becoming an important issue today and in the future.
Thank you, Pa.
Thank you, Pa Nyoman. With that, Pa, I'm going to give it back to Pa Shoaib. Pa Shoaib, are you there?
Yes. Pa Nyoman, thank you so much for your valuable contribution and insights into this, I think, a very important discussion with private sector, with the government and all the stakeholders. As Pa Sachin mentioned, that we are actually planning to do a digital transformation forum next year, and we hope to work with you closely on that, and also, of course, with your ministry. So thank you very much, Pa, for your valuable contribution, and we hope to keep our engagement with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pa
Sachin, now please continue with the discussion, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Shoaib. And first of all, I'd like to welcome big warm welcome to all our panelists. I think we have today a very eminent group of panelists who I would believe are, people at the forefront of what's happening in this space. Digital transformation is an interesting area. You might look at it very jargonistically, but if you look at it from a practical perspective of what are the actually jobs or works or activities happening, then it starts making sense, because then you realize that this is a sector which everybody can participate in their own way. It's not restricted only to the techies or the IT guys. So with that, I would like to just introduce my panel first. I have here Dr. Ilham Habibie. He's the Chief Executive of the National ICT Council, Republic of Indonesia. He is actually one of the key people driving the direction of where digital needs to go. He has been a very popular speaker in many conferences and events, and he has the opportunity to coordinate among the various government agencies and the private sectors in what I would say is implementing or overseeing a blueprint of where Indonesia goes. We'll hear a little bit more about him from that. Ilham also has many other interests, as you know, aeronautical, aircraft engineering, etc. And he has a multitude of companies. He's also in the banking sector. Why I mention this is because these sectors are actually all heavy users of AI, data, digital technologies, etc. So he would have not just a global overview, but also hands-on practical experience. So we'll hear from Dr. Ilham. Dr. Mark Burby has joined us from Intel. Thank you, Mark, for being here today. Mark is the Regional Sales Director of Intel, Growth and Emerging Markets, Asia Pacific. He covers Indonesia, and he is actually responsible for customer-facing business across government, education, telecommunications, FSI, energy, and other industries. He's been in many leadership positions in the last 20 years, but it puts him in the heart of the discussion today because, really what we need is continuity of experience, and that's what Mark brings in here. Thank you, Mark. Actually, the doctor his career was started as a medical doctor, graduating from the University of Cambridge, and he has an MA in philosophy as well. So we will hear from Mark a little later when the presentation starts. I'm just going to introduce the remaining. We have Gregory, Hendra, Lembong. Hendra, welcome today. He's the director of BCA and he's newly appointed, but he has 25 years of banking experience in Indonesia. Prior to BCA, Hendra was in Citibank and he held various strategy and product roles in Asia, Europe, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, CIMB Niaga, etc. He is also has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from University of Washington and a master's degree in engineering economic systems and from Stanford, USA. So Hendra brings together, a fantastic global experience in the whole process of how the banking sector is converting itself from, traditional banking into a very heavily technology-intensive sector. Last of all, we have Poonam. Poonam is the director at PT Infotech Solutions. It's an ICT company, of course, with a niche in broadcast media, software, and e-commerce solutions. Poonam has actually been in the middle of this whole discussion about where digital technology is going because she's also having a digital technology transformation show on Zoom, where I'm honored to be the moderator there as well. But Poonam actually has been having this conversation with a lot of companies who are in the middle of digital transformation, either as a user or as a provider of services and solutions. So she brings together a lot of, common wisdom of what the industry is doing and what are the challenges the industry is facing. She is actually has a postgraduate in science, business, and technology. She's an avid reader, a blogger. She's heavily active on digital media herself. So welcome to you, Poonam, also to be on this panel. So without much further ado, we're going to get started. I'm going to invite Mark Burby, to give us a presentation to set the stage for this discussion. Because, we heard from the minister, appointee Dirjen, who was here today, was talking specifically about, how the government sees itself contributing to creating a policy framework, which I think is very important. And Mark here is going to set the stage for our discussion with a presentation, which will let us know a little bit, let us go a little deeper into the subject, and that will be the basis of our discussion today. So over to you, Mark, and Shoaib, could you have the PowerPoint presentation ready as soon as Mark gives us an indication? Let him have some welcome remarks first. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about the role that technology is playing and will continue to play in what we're calling the new normal, right? So COVID-19 cases continue to rise in many countries, including Indonesia. And the impact this pandemic is having is far-reaching and really well beyond how its effect on people's just their health. So everyone is being impacted directly or indirectly, from governments and national companies down to the small enterprises and the self-employed. We're changing the way we work. We're changing the way we learn. We're changing the way we eat, the way we shop, the way we relax, the way we consume services. And it will come as no surprise that technology is really at the very center of these changes, helping us to really cope and manage the many challenges that social distancing, lockdowns, travel restrictions, and other disease prevention measures are causing. So I really believe that it's at times like this, times of crisis, that these times provide an opportunity to assess where we stand and evaluate or reevaluate our priorities. So maybe we can go to the presentation. Great. Next slide, please. So governments, where we'll start, are on the front line as citizens. The citizens are turning to their leaders for answers, for help, for guidance. And the economic impact that this epidemic is having is huge and unprecedented. Businesses are eating into their cash reserves. Others that, prior to the crisis, were in a precarious position are now requiring government and financial sector support or even facing bankruptcy. GDP decline this year is expected in most countries, though Indonesia is faring better than most. And stimulus funding, what we see is 3 times more than during the Great Recession of 2008, 2007-9. So predictably, spending on digital transformation, especially in the public sector, is going up, and seeing an almost 14% growth worldwide. Now, governments are facing the dilemma of how to spend the budgets wisely, managing both short-term issues such as keeping businesses open or continuity of children's education versus investing in sustainable high-value initiatives that will be relevant for many years to come. So governments are therefore required to strike a balance between solutions that meet the needs of today versus those of the futures. We can move to the next slide, please. So COVID-19 brought overnight tremendous pressure to the education sector, not only teachers and students, but also on the school's IT infrastructure. Ministries of education and schools and other educational establishments have been accelerating digital learning programs across the world. The education sector, and as well as parents, have been equipping students with PCs and tablets, setting up remote learning environments, and really looking for cost-effective solutions to deliver remote education. And despite the huge efforts we've seen this year, we're seeing mixed results at best. So what have we learned? We know that anywhere learning is possible, but it's challenging. And reliable access via 3G or 4G is very encouraging to hear about the increased rollout of 4G in Indonesia to the villages, or even through wired broadband. That this connectivity can be challenging, right, in terms of having reliable access. Equity issues are significant and have had a paralyzing effect, and I think that's something that we'll hopefully spend some time discussing further about the social impact of technology, as well as the role that technology is playing in this environment. The performance of the technology is critical, not just, say, from a PC perspective, but also from the experience. What's the quality of the screen, the audio input and output when using video conferencing, even the absence of input devices such as a keyboard or a mouse, when you say you're using a tablet, can be limiting. And then in other challenges, that in the education sector, the shift to the remote learning has revealed the differences between a reactive remote learning experience, which is deployable in a matter of days or weeks, versus a fully planned online or blended experience curriculum, which is really where we need to be moving towards. Yet, despite all these challenges, it's clear that the use of technology within education is only going to keep expanding. So let's go to the next slide, please. Beyond education, digital transformation is needed in other industries. In the retail sector, we're seeing the shift to online shopping, fewer people being able to go to do their shopping physically in person, and the associated delivery services, or the buy online, pick up in store model that we see very popular in many countries. And what people are buying is also changing, and it's leaning more towards health-related products. In banking, we see lending demand is changing and overall consumer spending is down, leading to less credit card activity and subsequent revenues. In hospitality, tourism clearly is the hardest hit industry, with many turning to domestic markets, right, for survival and staycation offers. Restaurants are offering online ordering and home delivery. And some businesses like Grab, Gojek are seeing this benefit. And like education, corporations are equipping their employees with PCs, remote connectivity, and collaboration tools to enable business continuity and home working like most of us now. Many companies, including those in the tech sector, are taking a very conservative approach, so limiting the time that their employees spend in the office and the shift from in-person to virtual meetings. And this is very challenging for some businesses who are traditionally very, in the office kind of environments, particularly in government. Next slide, please. Transportation providers are being challenged, right, to deliver safe, profitable services with social distancing constraints, as well as reduced capacities. Fewer people are traveling for leisure, that fewer people are traveling for business or even their daily commute. And the long-term impact is yet to be seen, especially as teleconferencing becomes more effective or people become more familiar and accustomed to using video, and so adoption will grow. And how businesses will react to that in the long term. The healthcare system clearly has been challenged. We've seen how many countries were ill prepared to deal with an epidemic, and solutions like telemedicine and digital patient records are being accelerated in adoption and utilization, as the need to deliver healthcare services remotely and safely grows. And also smart cities. There are quite a number of cities that are being labeled smart around the world. They're finding that they are better positioned to deal with the crisis. They have solutions such as autonomous vehicles for contactless delivery or transportation that they can leverage, and maybe established remote education and healthcare services already in place. Okay, next slide, please. So how is technology helping? Well, kiosks and other devices are being adopted to avoid in-person contact. For example, receptionists, information desks, or kiosks in fast food restaurants. Contactless solutions using gestures, voice, or biometrics to avoid or eliminate disease spread through touch. And also solutions that include, robots, drones, and autonomous vehicles come into this contactless environment. Another form of reducing contact is moving away from cash. So by replacing the notes and coins with digital forms of payment, we're not only reducing infection or the risks around infection, but we're accelerating a cashless society trend, which has already been underway for several years. Supply chain, in particular, the technology that enables supply chain is really being put to the test to ensure that the spikes in demand for items such as facial masks are being maintained in the midst of site closures, transportation disruptions and restrictions, or workers simply being prevented from going to work in the factories. And finally, AI solutions. So clearly, AI is very topical at the moment, and they're on the rise. An example of its relevance in this environment is around mask wearing and social distancing compliance. So we can use video surveillance feeds, and those feeds can be analyzed by AI systems to help organizations identify people that may be huddled in groups and not respecting the social distancing or not wearing masks. Let's move to the next slide, please. So we're seeing technology plays a fundamental role in how the world is managing, this COVID-19 crisis, both hopefully during and soon after the crisis. From e-banking to remote education, from video conferencing to automation. And many of these solutions are built on the newer technologies like virtual reality, the cloud, robotics, AI, and 4G and soon 5G. Next slide, please. So digital transformation in a post-COVID world will impact every aspect of our lives. It's not just what we're seeing now, and it's not just in certain areas. And as these digital transformation trends happen across multiple industries, as the solutions get implemented, as adoption starts to grow, we'll really be embarking on a true digital evolution. So, I've talked about several of these technologies already. So smart access control technologies, where you can use kiosks with temperature measurement or facial mask detection, crowd monitoring to enforce social distancing or capacity monitoring, remote learning and working, service robots, smart banking, smart vending machines. All of these technologies are starting to be seen more, and adoption is starting to grow. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, I believe that at times of crisis, it really provides an opportunity to assess where we stand and evaluate or reevaluate priorities. And that was certainly the view of Intel's co-founder, Andy Grove, who you see here, where he called out that, it's really organizations that can navigate through crises. The great ones are the ones that are going to seize the opportunity and really be improved by them. Next slide. So this is really the call to action. COVID-19, as we've seen, is anything but predictable. Think about what initiatives, organizations, the governments can take today that will solve your challenges now and in the future. And as Andy Grove said, use this as an opportunity to improve and become great. Technology really will play a fundamental role in how countries, corporations, schools, individuals manage through this crisis and thrive. And many solutions that were maybe once previously considered to be expensive or hard to develop or challenging to implement or even difficult to use, these solutions are now readily available and affordable and accessible, very relevant for this time. So the call really is to use this time to innovate, to boost productivity, and hopefully get back to strong growth recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. A great presentation. I think that sets the stage for us to discuss a little bit about bringing it closer to the ground and what's happening in Indonesia. So I'm going to ask Dr. Ilham Habibie to take the first part of the panel and open the discussion. Ilham. First of all, a warm welcome to you, Ilham. I think you're muted. If you could just unmute.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Yes.
Welcome, Ilham.
Hi, how are you, Sachin?
Doing great. And, Ilham, we are fortunate to have you here to open this discussion, because it's been well said in Indonesia for a few years now that if the country had to have a CIO, it should be somebody like you, who would help bring together a blueprint for where Indonesia should transform into. So I'm going to ask you a question as though you are the CIO, Ilham, which is, what's the helicopter view here? So much is happening, so many moving pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
What is the state of the nation today, and which direction should we really be heading? What's your view on that?
Okay, I think now I'm talking as I think already announced before by Shoaib. I'm basically since 6 years the chief executive of OneTechnos. This is basically a government entity. I'm not there full time, but this is one of these councils that involves people from outside the government. So I am like somebody like that. I'm actually a businessman. Sometimes I act also as an engineer or a scientist, but I'm having the honor and pleasure to be involved in matters related to the government through this council. So one of our key messages that we have propagated throughout so many years is that if we as a country want to really excel and evolve strongly here, being one of the most capable digital nations in the world, then we have to have a good digital leadership. And meaning to say, we have a lot of digital initiatives in Indonesia ongoing. But frankly speaking, for me personally, I wish that in the last cabinet, we would see something like a digital ministry, which is not the same like Cominfo. If you see what Cominfo is doing is very good, and they're doing good work there. However, sometimes I think it's very much focused on infrastructure or things related to infrastructure. But let's say you talk about the education, which is very important for the future of work and future workers or future technicians, future professionals, future entrepreneurs. That is not so much under the auspices of the Ministry of Cominfo. That's part of education and culture in Indonesia, which is the traditional way to do things. But I think there needs to be one command, basically, to really get the best out of our future by fully going towards the digital direction, which doesn't mean that we completely leave everything behind that we know. But as Mark Burby said before in his very good presentation, the future is about blendedness. There's a blending between what is right now in front of us, but what we call the new normal, which is actually not the new normal in my view, it's the new abnormal. Because right now we are doing in many things only online, and there's almost nothing offline or physical. What I've heard as a keyword now, that the future, the real new normal will be phygital. So it's physical and digital, phygital. So that means I say that many components of that phygital world are not under one command, but there is actually many commanders here. There's Ministry of Education and Culture. Then in Indonesia, we have a ministry which probably doesn't exist in other cabinets around the world. It's called the Ministry for Bureaucratic Reform and the maximum usage of the state resources or something like this, state apparatus. And that they are responsible for the status in e-government, for instance, which is also highly to do with digital, right? And there's more components to that. And I think it needs to be under one command in order to make sure that everything digital goes into the same direction. There's no overlap, and there's even no contradiction within policies, between different policies of the same government. We have, there's examples around the world, and I don't want to go into the specific countries, but that person could be, of course, reporting to the president. The president is in the end responsible for everything, but that person could be either somebody in the office of the president, it could be a selected minister, or it could be a government entity which is not ministerial. But there needs to be somebody who has the full overview and full command in order to drive everything into the right direction. That would be truly transforming the country. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of battles between different people that have a certain responsibility. Yes, we do transform. It's not that we don't transform, but not maximally. And I think that would be, a very important component from our side, from our viewpoint. Our viewpoint would be like that at the Mandiknas.
Actually, Ilham, you make a good point, because that's the question that I had asked the Dirjen as well about, digital seems to be in so many different buckets.
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
to try and coordinate and put it together is actually the challenge. So the structural reform in this space will allow different things to be done differently. So you make a good point. So I'm going to move to Hendra at the moment. Hendra is actually a practitioner, and he has been leading BCA. And I think we all know that BCA has been a market leader in bringing new technology to the banking sector. For so many years, BCA started much of the initiatives, and it continues to do so. So Hendra, the question to you is, what's the low-hanging fruit for BCA to implement these kind of technologies? If you could just give us a little bit of a view into how BCA as a bank sees digital transformation and how your role or participation in that entire digital economy. Over to you, Hendra.
Yeah, thank you, Sachin, for the introduction. Clearly this COVID thing, nobody expected, and we had to adjust. We have 1,200 branches. So in the past, if you come to a branch and it's flooded, you can go 10 minutes drive to another branch. But now, in the pandemic situation where everybody's supposed to stay at home, we move from 1,200 branches to one branch, which is mobile banking. Right? So suddenly, the pressure on IT to make sure it's always on is very different, the expectation. Right? So in BCA, we track this in the social media. if we have a system problem more than 30 minutes, we are dead. The Twitter, the attack, the media start calling us, the regulators calling us. So, you know, people know technology like any other machine will have some issues. We just need to make sure the backup, triple backup are in place to make sure the system is up and running. People can see their balances and can do financial transaction because they can't go out. We can't say you can go to the nearest ATM. Even that is not acceptable anymore, right? So I think it forced us to spend a lot of time to make sure the way we run our technology batch, etc., need to change. Right? In the past, we used to run this at midnight. Now it's not good enough. Shopee runs the campaign, the promotion until 1 o'clock. Is still people do shopping online. So we can't suddenly say it's down for maintenance, right? Because people need to pay over the e-commerce. So we can't do this, everything keep throwing people. So the whole automation becomes a lot more important, right? So the machine learning, all the AI stuff that Mark has spoken about, I think we have initiatives in all of them, right? I think machine learning, we know during the COVID situation, a lot more fraud attempts, right? So we recently implemented a solution from one of the technology company where if I shop somewhere in Kemang and 1 hour after that, there is an offline transaction in Bali, clearly it's impossible, right? So this is clearly a fraud. This is just a very simple example where the system alerts needs to be there real time online to tell us, right? And also to differentiate which one is a fraud and which one is not a fraud. So that AI needs to continuously be enhanced. The biometrics, we use this a lot now, right? Because people don't want to go to branches. So we invested on a voice biometric and face biometric. But the technology also has some limitation. For example, the systems and the tools that we try on the face biometric cannot differentiate twins, for example. I mean, yeah, it's quite rare for one twin try to cheat the other twin, but you know, just to share technology-wise, we need to roll out, even though it's not 100% perfect. So we keep investing on that. On the robotic side, you know, with the shift of work from home and work from the office, that forced us to also adjust the way we work. And the number of RPA, robotics process automation, has shot up by multiple times. We have 500-600 projects now in flight. In fact, just to give you an idea so that some of this transformation that BC has started many years ago start paying off. And rather than I keep talking, maybe I actually send Sachin a video, yes, a very short video, if you can play that so that give you a feel on some of this initiative in BCA.
BCA membangun CPC atau Cash Processing Center dengan konsep high automation dan less human. CPC BCA merupakan CPC tercanggih dan terkompleks pertama di dunia. Dengan adanya teknologi CPC, proses perhitungan uang sangat cepat dan tetap menjaga kualitas dari uang tersebut secara baik sehingga diterima kembali di masyarakat baik melalui cabang maupun ATM.
Yeah. So that
yeah.
robot is very expensive, by the way. But, it reduced the number of operators by 50%. And the notes that is packaged by the robot is basically 100% accepted by the central bank. We used to have issues with the quality, but now through the automation, it really helps a lot. So that's a little bit more exciting. The rest, of course, the typical initiative on automation. We have this called AIA, not the insurance company, but automation, integration, and analytics. These are the three main focus area. Same thing, I mean, we talk about the automation, we talk about analytics. The integration, we see a lot more customers want to deal with us with API. So the API usage has also shot up. In the past, they sometimes joke, the companies say, well, we have messengers, so it's easier if they ask the messengers to go to the branch. But with the pandemic, it forced them to connect with us online, right? So the API becomes very useful during this time.
Thank you, Hendra. That was actually, I love that video because, it shows us what's the technology behind the moving of money, cash. But it still kind of highlights that we are very cash economy still. There's a lot of physical usage of currency. Do you see that changing into more digital transactions? Or do you see that accelerating maybe? What's your view? Has the pandemic changed that?
Yeah, clearly pandemic accelerated as per Mark's presentation earlier. Now the first presentation by Pak Nyoman is absolutely critical for us because the mobile banking, as all of you know, the tier 3 and tier 4 cities still have signal challenges, right?
Yeah.
So in those places, I mean, we launched the online account opening. Before the pandemic, it was about 1,000 to 2,000 a day. Now we are at 5,000 account opening per day, right? So this has gone up. But in those tier 3, tier 4, first, they can't get the signal, they can't open online, then they can't do transaction through mobile banking. So for us, what Pak Nyoman mentioned is absolutely critical. Otherwise, we'll just stay on in the tier 1, tier 2 cities.
That's right.
And then we still need to deal with cash in those locations. So it's still largely cash economy, but it's probably one of the top costs of BCA of processing this cash. So if we can move more into the digital, we will be very, very happy. Right? So we hope that government plan will happen very soon.
Yes.
So we can all reach out to the tier 3 and tier 4 cities as well.
Sure. So I'm going to come back to you, Hendra. I want to keep the discussion flowing in a certain direction. And I think we're going to go to Poonam now. Poonam, especially with relation to this post-pandemic world, right? What applications do you see that we will be using more and more of? You've been talking to so many companies and they're doing so many different things. I mean specifically AI, machine learning, or big data applications. But where do you see more of this happening?
Yeah, and thanks, Sachin. Thanks for that question. And just to give you a little background on this, because we not only provide solutions to many kinds of companies, especially media and entertainment, but even to when we have been in conversation with our clients, the buzzword is transformation and acceleration. Means in every sentence that our clients talk to us from the IT department, this is what they say. They say that in the last 8 months, our company has leapfrogged, has jumped ahead in technology, but this has also come at a cost where their IT department has been reduced to half, 50%. And how has that happened? That has happened also where the total cost of ownership has gone down. And this is because they've moved all their applications and everything to a pay as you use kind of a situation. So they're using SaaS models, they're moving things on the cloud, they're using applications where they are not owning them, but they're just using them. And this has all happened because of AI, of data, of how we manage data and how we provide the processing power so that each company can use it. And why are they doing it? They're doing it not only to increase the speed of getting to where they want to go, but also as a way to increase revenue. to increase profit, because many companies have been hit very hard by the pandemic. Look at the food F&B sector especially. So for, their revenues have come down, and they are using these strategies, IT strategies, to jumpstart that. And, and I noticed that in the previous session prior to this panel, they spoke about e-fisheries, they spoke about agriculture. These are all places where artificial intelligence can work. And just, what is artificial intelligence? It is just a unique ability to identify and learn from data patterns and to develop predictive mappings between variables.
Sure.
So yes.
Coming to that, the point that you make, the obvious sectors which we see all this visible is definitely banking, that's for sure. And then we are also seeing e-commerce, because I think a lot of transactions are stay-at-home kind of transactions. But what are the other sectors you see some activity happening? I'm saying, where do you see people are looking at leapfrogging, for example?
Yes, in fact, very interesting, Sachin, because I noticed everybody's presentation, even Mark Burby and even Nyoman, and everybody spoke about education, banking, healthcare, but obviously everybody missed out media and entertainment, which is a huge part of our lives currently. Each of us is on Netflix. Each of us is looking at content all the time. We are on YouTube, we are talking to people, we are messaging people, we are using technology for all this communication and entertainment. But how does that happen? And that is also thanks to the power of technology. A lot of artificial intelligence goes behind the scenes. A lot of data analytics is used in the media and entertainment business. Now, do you know that if I and you were talking about disruption, and then if I picked up my phone and I wanted to look up something, the first thing in my search would be transformation or digital transformation, because it's listening to me. My device is listening to me. So everybody is now listening to what I'm saying. So this is the power of this intelligence. And it's scary. It's scary because what is the difference in being stalked and being understood? There's a huge difference.
You make a good point, Poonam. So I'm going to come back to you because there is a list of things that I want to ask you. I'm going to go very quickly to Mark. Mark, firstly, I enjoyed your presentation and it gave us some key points to talk about. But you also heard the Director General's government policy and his way of how the government is thinking. Did you have any initial reactions to what he was saying?
Well, I think actually to pack Ilham's point, right, I think that a lot of the things that we heard about were relating to the social impact and the social contribution that the infrastructure plays, right, in enabling the country to move forwards, right, with some of the initiatives. And Hendra called out, a very kind of poignant example, right, of bringing banking services to all parts of the country. I think that beyond infrastructure, to Poonam's point, it's the data that's being generated, and I think everyone's been talking about this, the insights that it's creating. These are some of the things I think where focus needs to shift into the, how are we going to use the data? What new services can we deliver around these things? What insights are we going to get from that? And I think another very fundamental part of this, and this is part of the work that we touched on just at the start, I don't know if it was recorded, but around the announcements around artificial intelligence that the government has made, right? They've got a 25-year program. Intel's partnering with the government to launch the AI for Youth program. So what that is about Industry 4.0 preparation, making sure that we are educating the new workforce, the children for the future, to be able to leverage. So I want to kind of see more from, I think, sort of, a coordinated approach, as Pak Ilham said, across multiple government industries to be really aligning to that common vision. And I think that will be really very powerful if Indonesia can do that.
So Ilham, taking up on that, I think Mark has vouched for, the approach that you had pointed out. There are two aspects of this, Ilham. One is, the framework of how the ministry has to operate or the government has to operate could do with a little bit of tweaking, right? But there's also a bigger game there that as much as you may create structural reform, at the end of the day, there comes this whole question about human resources. And do you see human resources as a challenge that needs to be addressed? What's your view on that?
Definitely. I mean, if we ask this question to ourselves, how do we see our work or the work in our sector that we work within, or how do we see that in the future? I mean, there's many of us that have maybe a glimpse of an understanding, but we don't really know how it's really going to really going to evolve. Yeah, and there's basic questions that need to be asked: as who does the work? What part of the work can be automated? Where do we actually work? And right now we're still experimenting, I think, and therefore that the definition of the future work, what it is and how do we do it and where do we do it, I think it's not. We cannot answer all of that. What we can do is we can prepare ourselves for that. There's some characteristics, some knowledge, some skills that we need to have that I think apply to everybody on this planet. I mean, we all have to be in a position to think critically. We have to have a good understanding how to do complex problem solving. We have to deal with this age of hyper connectivity and hyper information. I mean, it's just too much of everything, right? And it confuses people. It makes people unsure. There's people that actually misuse it for certain purposes, and so we have to deal with all of that, and that makes it, I think, these components, if we understand ourselves already, how do we have to prepare ourselves for us and our colleagues and our family and our company, our ecosystem, then I think we understand the dimension of what education actually, or learning, I better like the word learning and education means for the future, because learning is something that is associated with lifelong, right? It's never too late to learn anything. Education, sometimes you attribute to a certain institutions, certain phases in your life, etc. It's not a continuous thing. And this learning actually, I think the real question is, how do we learn actually in the future? To get information is something you can do everywhere and everywhere, anytime, when anybody can do this, to get information. But information is not the same like knowledge or understanding or experience. That needs to be conveyed in a different manner. And that can be done, I think, a big part of that can be only done with others. Let's assume you learn something about technology. You can learn the principles of technology online. It's better probably to watch a YouTube video than to listen to some of the teachers that teach that every year the same thing. They get a certain routine and it becomes boring, I think, for many people. You have to, maybe there's not enough excitement in the lecture, and there are people that are very, very good in giving these kind of lectures, but that's just the information. How do you have to put that information to work? You have to basically hands-on, say you're tasked to find an answer to a certain challenge. You have to create a prototype. You have to basically make it work and then fail with it and then do it again, etc. Only through this iterative hands-on approach, I think, complex things like technology can be learned. And there's others, not only technology, other things. I think that the learning is not so much more only classroom and one directional, but it needs to be multi-directional. In a group, the role of the teacher will have to change to become more a mentor and a motivator, and the learning goal will be more individualized. I mean, and to achieve that individual learning goal, I think that is basically the task of the teacher in the future. So it's not the whole class as one, but every student within the class, it will be the class also smaller, probably it's not more than 20, because the concentration of the teacher will be very challenged in that kind of environment. But I think that is a very, very important part of how we going to establish the future world. And there's more to it. I think things like economical concepts. If you think about the digital content, I mean, Poonam, you mentioned SaaS, software as a service, right? That is the word that we know today. I think from One Thinkness, we envision already with our partners worldwide that there will be something like manufacturing as a service. So the global supply chain that we know as now, that products are produced in one country in the millions, and you send it out, creating a lot of carbon footprint everywhere and causing a lot of havoc to the environment, etc. That could be at some point in time the thing of the past. Globalized will be basically bytes. This is a typical quote of the so-called Fab City movement. Globalizing the bytes, the atoms stay at home, meaning to say you send out the digital products worldwide. That doesn't cause so much damage to the environment, but the localization of the product will be done, the product will be produced in a localized way. In that regard, actually the economy will also be more spread. The contribution of the individual populations, they will have their own production center everywhere. And so the discrepancy or the divide, the social divide, the digital divide, the economic divide will be lessened by that. And I think this is a far-reaching consequence of what I call the future digital world. It's not just digitalizing what we know as now, but going from something as people call the economy of scale to what will be in the future, the economy of scope. So you will have more confined autonomous economic centers. It could be basically a city creating, manufacturing or producing much of what it needs today, including the food and the energy produced in the city. And that might be the future world. But that is a far-reaching extrapolation of what we understand today, what is digital. Sorry, I talk very much into the future, but I think we sometimes have to think ahead.
I think, Ilham, it is important actually to think ahead, because, you know, our actions will actually be guided by how far we can think ahead. Right? Yeah. So it's actually, that's a refreshing way to, you know, foresee into the future. I always like that whole idea of, if you were to fast forward 10 years, what would it be like? And then, you know, you rewind back again and see how you get there. So actually, I want to take this question to Hendra. Hendra, you know, having human resources who can get all this done is a big challenge. How does BCA addressing that? I'm saying, how much of this is your own in-house teams? How much is it working with partners? How does it all come together?
Okay. Yeah, very good question. It's an everyday challenge. Yeah. Nowadays, we think the digital transformation, digital banking, is supposed to be considered core to banking. So we would like to do a lot more things in-house. We recruit several hundred people a year. Our IT staff now is already over 1,000, which is probably bigger than a lot of the IT companies in Indonesia. We initially recruit fresh graduates from university. Now we recruit high school students, graduate, and then put them in our academy. We have our academy in Jogja because Central Java minimum wage is half of Jakarta. And initially you set it up physically, but with the digital world, suddenly we take people from all over Indonesia. You don't need them to come specifically to that site. So we are very excited that we can attract talents from across the country because you can do this digitally. But unfortunately, it's still not enough. So we still use, I think on the development side, we still use about 25 development vendors to help us. Because of two reasons. One, the demand is a lot more than we can do in-house. So we use the vendors. And second, we do not have the expertise and it will take time to build. For example, it's easier to find Android experts than iOS. So some of the iOS developments, we outsource it to a company who have iOS, but we participate in the Apple Academy and hopefully to recruit more iOS experts in the future, but that takes time. So yeah, we use all of the above, Sachin, to meet the demand of what we need to do. And last but not least, listening to Pak Ilham, thinking about the future, you've probably seen in the news that we invested and bought a bank and convert them to bank digital. What it means by that is it's bank as a service. We always talk about as a service nowadays, right? Recently, all the e-commerce players want to offer banking services, but you know how difficult it is in terms of license, regulatory approval. So they all partner with us. If you have Gojek, GoPay, you can take money out from your wallet through BCA ATM, right? So banking as a service, partnering with platform players, and also try to do it ourselves using our own digital bank, using the latest technology, try to use cloud a lot more to Poonam point, but we want to try it on our bank digital because BCA is huge. We don't want to mess around and try new things that can damage the, what do you call it, the always on, right? Because if it's, you can't afford to be down more than 30 minutes. So yeah, looking at the future, we do not know, but we need to be ready. So our bank digital will be our R&D and experiment. We don't expect to make money immediately, but it meant to help us understand the future behavior a lot faster than if we tried to do it in the mothership.
That's a fantastic R&D initiative, Hendra. I'll be very keen to see how that goes in the next 1 or 2 years. So we'll talk more about that. So Poonam, do you have a view on how media is being used for this learning process? You know, because yes, we are familiar with, digital learning has all gone on to watching videos. Does it really work? Is there a better alternative? How should you be approaching the use of media for learning?
So in media, we say content is king.
Yeah.
So here again, for learning, content is king. The better content you have, the better learning can happen. And this also is very driven by artificial intelligence now. You'd be surprised to know that every time you forward a movie or you forward something on Netflix or on any OTT platform, the engine is learning what parts that you do not like to watch. So this is all information that is gathered for content producers. Did you know that House of Cards, when they launched on Netflix, they already knew it would be a hit based on what people like to watch? And this learning from the media entertainment industry, these learnings are key for the education industry as well, because it helps us to understand that what kind of content is required to get to the educational goals of the learners.
You make a good point, Poonam. You make a very good point. So do you see any education initiatives doing it the right way? Because, I think a lot of education is very K-12 or university oriented, but we are not talking about upscaling skills.
But let us look at Udemy, let's look at Coursera, look at these number of online learning platforms. They are doing a good job. They allow people to develop their own content and put it online. And then when people look at it, they will only do what works for them. And then through that process, you already, the cream rises to the top. So you get the best, so you can see the analytics, you can see which content is better. And then you get to that through all these technology that is available to you.
Okay, great, Poonam. In fact, we're getting a lot of questions from the audience as well. So I'm going to go to that in a few minutes. But I want to ask Mark, before we go into the Q&A section, Intel's been doing a lot of work in this space, and I want to know a little bit more about, because people always think of Intel as, Intel Inside, you sell computers, you sell chips. But I know you do a lot more beyond that. Would you like to give a very quick overview of the kind of things Intel does in this space, which is different from what the public perception may be?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Of course, everyone's familiar with the name Intel, right? And the CPUs that power a lot of the computers and the infrastructure that we use today, right? Either visibly or in the background. But Intel does a lot of work, and specifically, we're focusing on the education sector, where we're working with solution providers, be they content developers or platform providers like Google, for instance, with their Google Classroom, right? That's so prevalent now, to ensure that those platforms are giving the right kinds of experience. And then going beyond that, looking to the future of education, Intel is also planning or has been developing some thought leadership around the future for education. To Poonam's point, the actual way that we learn, the way that we teach, the way that we access information, it needs to evolve. And we talked earlier about AI skills, but it's not just AI. There are things like design thinking, data modeling, all right, data science, and other things that are the future skills that need to be developed, right? So we're also looking at what the skills are. And then the last thing that I'll kind of touch on is it's a bit R&D, but what we're also doing is looking at the application of artificial intelligence in the learning environment. So imagine, a teacher today who is managing a remote class, right? They could be young students, and that teacher doesn't know whether that child is understanding what they're saying, or paying attention, or watching a video, or on their phone. So through the use of the webcam built into the PC, through artificial intelligence coded into the PC itself, so it doesn't need to be connected, it's built in the artificial intelligence on the device, to be able to determine, does the child understand what is being communicated? Are they showing facial expressions that might show that they're not comprehending? Is there attention elsewhere? And then be able to advise and guide the teacher to notify them and take the necessary kind of action or intervention. So there's a lot of scope, right, for how we perceive education to be evolving going forward. And the ability for us to use AI in training, to understand children, to personalize the education experience, to give children and anyone learning that ability to pace the learning on the basis of their own individual needs and requirements. Those are all the things that the future presents. Intel's working on those.
Perfect. In fact, I have 2 teenage kids. I'd love to have that software installed in my house. That's on a lighter note. Ilham, a question has come in from some of our participants. There's one from Mark Winkle.
Okay.
So, Ilham, how likely is it that Indonesia will use the new abnormal to introduce standards of sustainability into government policies and regulations? So, you on that. Follow-up to that is there a window for, say, green energy policies to reshape or shift how the government emerges from the pandemic? A little linked to the tech side of it. Yeah.
Okay, so I personally see that, yes, indeed, there is a stronger awareness, I would say, of the government that we have to more embrace and really implement things related to renewable energy. Yeah. However, I mean, the last years have clearly shown that we are far behind the figures and numbers that we have projected. I mean, the Indonesian government is far behind the numbers they have projected for themselves. And so there's still a lot of homework to be done in order to overcome the current deficiency in support for renewable energy. And I think from a business perspective, it is more to do with the conflict between giving, low cost versus environmentally friendly, because some of it is not yet, or was not yet. It's getting better now, particularly with the solar energy, because solar energy is getting really cheap. But the challenges regarding solar are not so much in the cost, but it's actually in the characteristic, because it's intermittent. You have it during the day, you don't have it at night. Obviously, you have to provide energy storage. Also, it disturbs the net because there's the fluctuation of the electricity. You have a lot during the day and not. It's difficult. I don't want to go too much in detail, but yes, there is definitely to Mark's question. This is Mark Winkle, right?
That's right.
Yes, Mark's question. This is. I think it's a good momentum to start now looking at renewable energy, particularly at solar. Indonesia is not a wind country. But solar, I think, has a good future, and probably also things related to biomass, because we have a lot of biomass in Indonesia. Yeah.
Sure. Got it. Thank you.
But there was another question, but I didn't get the first part of the question. Was it all renewable energy?
No. Green energy policies. Is there a
policy-wise, we have always been quite aggressive. The policy says 25% of the energy provided should be renewable energy, but we're still higher single digits, right? And so it's not there yet. And that includes traditional renewable energy like hydroelectrical power stations of the big kind with a big dam, etc., which is actually not environmentally friendly, really. So the new renewable energy is mostly what is that? Geothermal, which Indonesia has a lot, but it's usually not in locations which are close to the population, and the rest is actually more solar and little wind, not much. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilham. Another question actually has come from Richard Kartavijaya.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to push this to Hendra from BCA. So Richard wants to know how big companies may act to help, digital adoption. I think that's a little bit also touching on how you're educating your customers. So over to you, Hendra.
Yeah. So we help a lot of companies to do a few things during this pandemic. Of course, try to do banking transaction online, but we also help them try to sell their products online. Some of them try to create a website or sell through the e-commerce. So we create various solutions for them to be able to display their products and pay and generate invoices where, for example, the invoices already has the QR code so that the individual who view this online can immediately pay using QR. So that's just one example where we help a lot of the companies selling online due to this pandemic.
Okay, that's good. So Poonam, a quick question on this learning side of it. That how are you seeing the rest of the industry, the companies that you're talking to? What measures are they taking to, educate their? And I mean this from the perspective of Richard's question, which is large companies, big companies. How are they doing their bit in order to,
Yes.
encourage digital adoption?
I think this is a very important part of corporate sustainability on how to share knowledge among the large staff members that you have, whether it's a small company or a large company. The training needs continue going, especially with the changes that are happening at such a fast pace. The knowledge sharing has to take place so that everybody is on the same page. And I think people are utilizing a lot of the online platforms that are available now for communication. So face-to-face, and they're doing large, because just like education in classrooms or in primary schools, a lot of education is also taking place at the corporate work front. And we ourselves are also doing a lot of training sessions. We are also reaching out to the public where we are trying to do some knowledge sharing. And I think this is the only way we can. There is really no opportunity at this moment for, in-person trainings, etc. So everything has moved online, and it's amazing the amount of wonderful information and content that you can access right now.
Thank you, Poonam. Mark, I wanted to come to you about, you have a, you have a much bigger market to look at, and you've been looking at what's happening in so many other countries. I think this pandemic has truly hit everybody, and different countries are reacting in different ways because of whatever state of the economy has been, or how ready they have been for digital. Let's put it that way. Any benchmarks or lessons from any other countries that you'd like to talk about, which might be relevant for Indonesia?
Oh, that's a tough question. Best practices. I would love to say the answer is yes. I think that one of the things that we've seen is whether it is lack of preparedness, right, at a government level or World Health Organization, right? We can look at it from multiple angles. I think that every country is setting its policy and putting certain things in place in order to do what it thinks is best, right? Either to get to zero infection rate or keep infection rates to just flatten the curve. We used to talk about flattening the curve. Some countries are trying to eliminate the curve, right? And hold out for vaccine or whatever it is that will come that will hopefully get us out of this. I don't think anyone truly knows what the answer is. And with coronavirus, I don't want to get into the medical side, but you know, the virus mutates, things, it's highly unpredictable, right? We don't know the effectiveness of the vaccine. So because of this, when we talk about new abnormal or new abnormal, whatever we want to call it, we have to not accept that this situation is temporary, but it's something that we need to take a longer term view on, either because of COVID-19 or whatever COVID-19 evolves into, or the next pandemic that comes along. So, you know, the short answer is, I think we've yet to see what the end state is, that at a global level, we can all work to that common vision. I think personally, and this could be a bit controversial, I haven't seen a great great level of leadership, right? In certainly the normal places where you would look for leadership on how to manage this. We've got some good examples. I mean, we can turn to like New Zealand, we can look at Singapore and Vietnam. You know, there's some fantastic results, right, that we've seen in terms of controlling the disease, right, and taking very, very good views. But whether those will have the long-term impact that we need, certainly they're good short-term measures.
Got it. So I have a question now, actually, I'm going to pose to all of you one by one. Just give you a bit of background. Indonesia Economic Forum always has a view to engage the youth. So this year, we've got about 22 universities and business students, I would say from various fields, like economics, technology, startups. In fact, we have some incubators who have also put some students. We have about 40 or 50 participants from that sector. These are the youth, and they're looking at, you know, what we are doing in a very close way, because they have their own views of what they need to do as soon as they enter the workforce, which is a year or two away from now. So any words of advice to the young generation from each of you of how they should be looking? What are the sectors that they should be focusing on? Is it the same what you're doing, or should it be a different view? So over to you one by one. Maybe we'll start with Ilham. Your advice to the youth.
Yeah, my advice is, if you think about the future, as a young person, I would look at actually the big challenges. What are the challenges that you see in your own environment? Yeah? What can we do in order to find solutions to that, and use basically whatever we have available at hand in order to get there and to really do it. And I think automatically a lot of that will be digital. Yeah, that's clear. And how do you actually do this? You have to do it in a kind of like a hackathon environment, right? Basically very cross-sectoral. You give it the hackathon approach. There's a certain time for ideation, and you really do hands-on, find a solution, and you try it out, and maybe you fail and do it again. But by that, people get more and more involved in this new kind of thinking. It's very solution-oriented, critical thinking, using technology as it goes, which is actually getting less and less complicated. I think the way we use technology these days, if we start from programming, I used to learn program many years back. It was really still typing a lot, typing and making a lot of typing mistakes, and there will be mistakes in the program. But in these days, you can do object-oriented programming. You just point and click. In many cases, many of the subroutines in the program are basically already prepared, and you can just use it. It's a different world today, but there's still a lot of people out there. Actually, the majority of people that I know are very scared of tech. They don't want to touch it. This is not their thing. But I think nobody can run away from that anymore. And the literacy amount, that the level of literacy regarding tech or regarding digital things had to be drastically improved in the future for all young people. I think, and knowing young people as they are, they're very energetic, very curious, very enthusiastic. I think it should be not a difficult thing to achieve if we show them the right way to do it. And I would do it in this kind of a hackathon, very fast, intensive sessions, short sessions of innovation spurts and bursts, and then basically apply everything as it goes, and they will get there by itself. It's not so much about academics. It's more about hands-on innovation, I think.
Great, Ilham. In fact, one sentence from each of you. We're just coming close to the end of the session. So maybe Hendra, any words of wisdom to the youth?
No, it's pretty much covered by Ilham, right? Just always keep open mind, keep learning. I think Poonam mentioned there's so many courses online. So if you have an interview or opportunity, you have enough materials to learn very quickly and adapt. Nowadays, you can do everything remotely. So nothing is impossible. Pursue the dream job. But you know, in this new world, you see a lot more different opportunities. So have an open mind and keep learning.
Fantastic. Poonam, your
you know, I agree with everything that's been said, but I would also like to add to this by saying that all answers are available now online, at least most are. And you are also available to connect with anybody globally now. So do not feel limited. There are no limits now. Think of yourself living in a limitless world, and you can reach out. And the second piece of advice is that, you know, don't look for instant responses, because we have got so used to using these input devices which give us a direct feedback that we got used to it. But just to sit back and, you know, ground yourself, take your bearings and move forward. And my last thing is, may the power of AI be with you.
So with that, we have to go to Mark, because Mark is the guy who's leading so many AI initiatives for youth. So Mark, your words of you know, encouragement to the youth, the future entrepreneurs of tomorrow.
Yeah, look, you know, I think the critical thing for the youth of today, right, is that they can look and evaluate problems in a way that us old people think differently, right? And actually, it's not one or the other, but I think that if you're looking at it from a skill set perspective, we've talked about AI and machine learning, data science, programming and coding, simulation and modeling. All of those are the future skills that we need them to develop. That's first area of skill set. Second area is the mindset, right? We need to get kids today to think about design thinking, computational thinking. And then the third thing is this new world that, again, all of us who have been around for a little longer, you know, are adapting to. For them, they were brought into this kind of social, emotional environment. How do we adapt the way that we consume services, buy things, engage, work? You know, how do we live differently in this digital environment? And they will have the clarity and the way for the answers that, you know, some of us are still scrabbling around for. So yeah, look to the answers from this important demographic.
Fantastic. Thank you. In fact, that's all the time that we have today, but I would love to, you know, engage with all of you on other occasions of the Economic Forum. In closing, I would like to say that, you know, I like the words which we started with, which Mark put in his thing, is act now, don't wait. And this is the time to innovate. And the pandemic is actually an opportunity. And if you were to really follow the creation of the blue chips, you know, the Fortune 500 companies, most of them were actually created during the World War II. So huge disruption creates huge opportunity, which then entrepreneurs are able to capitalize on. So that's a learning. And probably this pandemic, when you look backwards, you know, 15, 20 years from now, it would have created a huge number of entrepreneurs, companies, technologies, etc. And we would be looking at a very different world today then. So with that, I'd like to thank all my panelists. I think we had a fantastic panel. I'm really honored to have been, you know, given this opportunity to moderate today. I'd like to, you know, thank each one of you and all the participants who participated today. Feel free to, you know, engage with us. If you have any more questions, you can do it offline by email and other ways. Thank you, Ilham. Thank you, Poonam. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Hendra. Look forward to catching up with you again. And back to the studios with Shuad.
Thank you, Sachin, for a wonderful job moderating this session. Pak Ilham, thank you so much. Hendra, Mark, and Poonam for a very lively discussion, I think, on one of the key topics for Indonesia, and not just Indonesia, but I think for all of us as individuals in terms of how we adapt and learn and move forward in the digital age. So thank you very much. Please stay with us if you would like to watch the next session. We are now moving into our final session over the past 3 days, and we have a very, very lively and influential panel to talk about emerging investment trends. Over the last 3 days, we've talked a lot about other sectors, and we'd like to wrap it up with a broad brush about where things are heading in terms of investment and business. So stay with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay.
Things are looking up. Your business is growing. So what's your next step? A bigger office? A new supplier? Your next big contract overseas? Your business has growing needs. You'll need more support, more flexibility, more resources, and a bank that makes it their business to help expand your business. Welcome to Business Banking with HSBC. All our experience and expertise brought right to you so that you and your business can take the next step. You'll have support from a dedicated relationship manager and access to our global network of experts. The flexibility to manage your finances across multiple devices. International accounts all on one platform. And much more. So choose Business Banking with HSBC and take your next step.